Welcome. You are watching session 2 of the Hot AI Summer Panel Discussion Series, Breaking Governance with AI Risks.
Yeah. All right. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the second session of this Hot AI Summer Panel Series. As you can tell, most of the panelists and myself are dressed up in our best Hawaiian. So it got that fun vibe to the series. So if you missed it, the first session last month was demystifying AI. We talked about just general terminology, getting people on the same page, talking about use cases, and really getting pretty deep right off the bat into how to make AI projects at your company successful. So that's the goal for this, is really to be as tactful as possible and get you guys the information you need to make AI success with security in mind from the start, instead of having these projects take off and having you play catch up, and be behind the whole way. So thank you all for coming. I really love to see all the new faces. Just out of curiosity, raise your hand if you're this is your first ISSA meeting. So yeah, that's fantastic. And then we have, obviously a ton of regulars in the room. I think I would say probably 60 or so people here today, which is fantastic. And then we have more people joining online. And so for the people online, Julian's going to be checking the Q&A, so feel free to ask questions and we'll cycle them into the panel discussion. So just to give you guys some housekeeping stuff, agenda for the night, you can see timeline. Wanted to kick off the virtual so that they didn't have to wait for everybody to get their food and get seated. So we just started that. Panel is going to run until about 7:15, and then feel free to stick around for some networking. I highly recommend meet at least one new person while you're here. There's a lot of people in the room. So, and then if you want to highlight an open position at your company, or sponsor one of these awesome events, or just get involved with the volunteering like Darius was doing out front with check-in, or mentorship opportunities for just get back to the community. There's a lot of opportunities for us to get you involved on our committees. And then lots of events going on. This is not all of them. If you're on the newsletter, you probably saw a lot of partner events that I highlighted. But Q3 Mixer at AleSmith, that's a bunch of different groups kept getting together, so not just ISSA. It's on the 4th. On the 11th, I think we're trying to coordinate sponsor on the date, but I will get an update to you all. Happy hour at Carl Strauss. That's our monthly happy hour. Typically, we do this the second Wednesday of the month, our happy hour, and then the fourth Thursday, aka today, is our educational event. They move around depending on other things happening like holidays. And the reason we're looking at the 11th is because the 10th has the conference that we're also promoting, which is FutureCon. So that's also posted on our calendar. And yeah, if you go here, there's a lot of different events, not just ours, that we post. And then the third session of this panel series is on September 25th at Light Edge Data Center. So that's going to be really cool. We're going to be talking about advanced threat vectors and SecOps automation. And then happy hour October 8th, to be determined. But yeah, that's what we're looking at for the schedule right now. And then if you're not a member of ISSA already, I know there's opportunity for everybody to come. First meeting free for educational event, as well as first meeting free for happy hour. So take advantage of that. Check us out. I always tell people there's a lot of groups in San Diego. Check us all out. See what resonates. We're different and fun, but don't take my word for it. And you can reach out. Who will be sitting in front of the camera when she gets back for any membership details. But the one thing to note is, I think on average we do 2 events a month, sometimes 3. Over the course of the year, it's about 25 events. So quickly pays for itself. Membership's about $125 a year, and all the events are included. We're going to be doing some members only events as well, like Goals games, Padres games, that sort of thing. Website's a great resource to go to right off the bat. Check out upcoming events. It's kind of the hub, but we also send out a newsletter via email, and we're on social media. LinkedIn's primary one, but Twitter and Facebook as well. And then I'm going to kick it off to our partners. So our annual partners are Intelligence Services, Cato Networks, and Network Quotes. And they've done a great job of supporting us this year. And then tonight, for this really amazing dinner that hopefully you guys are enjoying, is GuidePoint Security and Cribble. And I'll let them come up and talk. So.
Thank you, Dave. Appreciate it. Hi, everyone. My name's Ahmed Kira. I am a solutions engineer here at Cribble. How many of you here have heard of Cribble? You don't count in the back. All right, a good number of people. But for those who haven't heard of us, let's talk a little bit about who we are, what problem we're here to solve, and just a little bit about us. So we were founded in 2018. We have half of the Fortune 100 companies today. We've had already easily 600 million in funding, and we hit 100 million ARR 2 years ago. So we are on our trajectory here, just as one of the top fastest growing companies in the software company in general. But what are we here for? What problems do we solve? We are here to solve your data volume problems. How many here have Splunk as their SIM? Google SecOps? No. What about what do you guys have as your SIM or your SIM? Maybe anybody?
Lumen.
What is that? Sorry.
Ad Lumen.
Okay. Sentinel. Okay. Anybody else? Rapid7. So with a lot of these SIMs, you have surprise costs, because you just send them data, you think it's free with like Sentinel E3 or whatnot, and then all of a sudden you get surprise bills when you go over your license and have too much data that you're storing. So Cribble is founded to help solve that problem and give you ultimately control of your data, because at the end of the day, 29% year over year that your data volumes are growing for all of your security logs that we're really talking about. We're talking also about monitoring observability data. We're talking about traces for open telemetry, or what's called APM. Security side, all your security logs. That volume is growing pretty high, but is your budget growing that much? Yeah, probably not. So we're here to solve that gap and address that by giving you choice, control, and flexibility of what to send to Sentinel, right? Or what to send to Ad Lumen, or various other SIMs that are out there. And ultimately, you're putting the most valuable data in those locations, but you're also adopting a vendor neutral data lake. And so if tomorrow you want to move off Ad Lumen and go to Sentinel, or you want to get off Rapid7 and go to CrowdStrike Next-Gen SIEM, you have all of your historic data in a vendor neutral place to always have access to. And once we have the data, we can do various things with it. We'll shape it for the destination that we're sending the data to, because guess what? The way Rapid7 wants it versus the way that CrowdStrike Next-Gen SIEM wants it versus Sentinel, they're all different, right? So we will optimize it for that destination, but also only send the useful stuff, right? Instead of just sending everything and your SIM becomes a data landfill. Right? A lot of people just say, yeah, we'll just put all our logs into our SIM. And there's very little valuable data in there, so it becomes a landfill. So Cribble will help optimize the data via all these various methods here. How do we do that today? So we started out in 2018 with one product, our flagship product, Cribble Stream. And today we are a multi-product company. So we've been listening to our customers where, okay, getting control of the goes is one thing. Stream is what allows you to send it to Sentinel, Ad Lumen, others, but also send it to a lake, which could be your own storage, your choice. We also have as another option. And also, a lot of times now with listening to customers, they're not as happy with their agents on the Linux, on their Kubernetes, on they need a vendor neutral way of collecting data. That's where Cribble Edge comes into play. It's the same binary as Cribble Stream behind the scenes. So all of the processing that you can do up there, you can also do it down there with Cribble Edge. So now you can collect, now you can process, now you can long-term economical storage with Cribble Lake and still send the useful stuff to your SIM. And then let's say you want to search some of the stuff that's in your S3 bucket or blob storage, ECS, what have you, as well as various APIs. Or Cribble Lake, we have Cribble. So listening to our customers, we're not here to replace a SIM and search all that data. It's for those compliance use cases, those investigative use cases where the data has aged out of the SIM, right? So for those scenarios where you're keeping 6 months of data in the SIM, now with Cribble Search, you can go beyond that to search that remaining data. These are some common various projects where Cribble can fit in. So when you look at this list here, SIM logging migration is a big one on the security side. Threat hunting analysis, going into Cribble Search to look at your old historic data, for example. Anything else here that looks relevant?
You're doing almost everything that you need. Data.
Yeah, the various security projects where Cribble can absolutely fit. And before we finish this off and give the floor back here for the panelists, we are across all verticals. We're not specific to just one vertical. And you don't necessarily even have to have a data volume problem in order to look at Cribble. A lot of customers look at Cribble before to avoid having that data volume problem. Right? So it's important to also be proactive in that sense and think forward to modernize your security logging architecture. Right? And that's that a lot of customers come to us first in order to get ahead of the ballgame. And before we give it away to the rest here, anybody here from out of town or likes to go to DC? We do have our annual conference here as well, coming up in October. It's in National Harbor, which is right south of DCA Airport. Pretty nice area. Actually, I was there once. So by all means, please, we'd love to have you there if you guys can make it.
Maybe next year you can advocate for San Diego.
100%, yes. 100%. But also just a little bit about us. Our community, we have like 10,000 people on our community now. So growing, pretty large community, and a lot here available as well on our website. So that's all we have here. So thank you guys very much. Yes, question.
Give us the back version of the story behind the name.
The story behind the name Cribble. Yeah, Cribble is a device that you use to sift for gold. So you remove all the noise, all the junk, and just keep the actual gold. So that's what we're doing with the data, right? We allow you to sift all that junk and keep the gold. Great question.
All right. Thank you, Ahmed. I never knew the genesis of the name. That's very cool. Very, very cool. Okay. But for those that don't know me, I am about my company in a moment. I passed my 1-year anniversary with GuidePoint. Prior to that, I was the CISO at Callaway Golf. Thank you. I was the CISO at Callaway Golf up in Carlsbad for nearly 10 years. And actually coming to this office is a little bit of deja vu. I started my career out of college with KPMG in management consulting on the IT and cybersecurity side, and really got the spark and interest for cyber back in 2009. I was on a full-time project up at eBay with their infrastructure security team, and it was a blast, and I learned so much. I am today. So I will also be the moderator of today's panel. So I will try not to take up too much time, but I do want to take a moment to recognize my company and what we do. How many in the room are familiar with GuidePoint? Raise your hand. More than I would expect. We're doing a great job. Yay. So we are, let me move forward here. We are a pure play cybersecurity VAR. Does anyone, I'm going to make sure you're all awake. Does anyone know what VAR stands for? How about you?
Value-added reseller.
Thank you. Value-added reseller. And my colleagues, this is extremely cheesy. I'm not a comedian, but we like to say we put the value back in VAR. And I think this slide truly demonstrates why that is, and honestly, why I knew I wanted to go back to consulting when I left Callaway, but I didn't know where. And if you had asked me, would you go to a VAR? I would have said absolutely not at first. But so we were founded on the East Coast, which is why some of you may not have heard of us. Our founder tracks with the military, things like that. And as you can see the numbers on the screen here, our numbers, these marketing slides are about 6 months old. So we're over 1,200 employees today. And the thing that really attracted me to GuidePoint is nearly 60% of those employees are technical. So technical service delivery, like myself. So we can help with implementations. We can help optimize your environment, whether that be Cribble, CrowdStrike, you name it. So we have specialists in many areas. The other thing that I love is we're very regional. So I work for our Southwest team, which is Southern California, Arizona, Nevada, and Utah. When you look at our Southwest, we probably have, I think we have about 13 people. And as you can imagine, we need to support all of our clients in the Southwest. So we more go oceans wide than really deep, most of us, although we all have our areas of specialty. For me, I oversaw all verticals of cyber when I was at Callaway. But for me, my background, I focus more so in data security, identity, and GRC, whereas my counterpart, the other field CISO, comes from a threat intel red teaming and security operations. He ran the SecOps department at Viasat, built and ran that, and he's a retired Marine. So what I love is that you can't know everything about everything. I don't care what you say. And we have these national teams. A few of them are listed here on the bottom, your right, where these areas, whether it's AppSec, identity, cloud, that is all they do all day, every day. So if one of our clients has a need in one of those verticals, we call on our national team to deliver those services. So I love that like I don't have to know everything about every vertical within cyber, and all these folks are just a phone call away. I think I covered most of it. Let's get into our clients. So we have over 4,700 customers. We work with over 715 cybersecurity vendors like Cribble, like Keto Networks. Basically, if at your company, if you're thinking, I wonder if GuidePoint does that. If it is related to cybersecurity, any vertical, whether it's something from your SIEM to application security or even disaster recovery, if it DSF framework, we do it. So always ask. But I love to see these numbers about the types of companies that we cover. In my opinion, working with many VARs over my time at Callaway, right, we can service our clients faster. And procurement is a lot faster as well. We're very flexible with our clients on those, and I know they appreciate that. I will not try to read this to you, but this is just a demonstration. These are all the we can provide that as a service.
Waiting to see if one of the volunteers is going to step up into that position, but on these three committees, there is opportunity for volunteers to join and get involved and do some activities that are outside of what the board is focused on, just make the community better, make each one of these events better every time. So we go through an iterative process and try and like just make sure that we're giving back to you guys and focusing on what you care about versus just arbitrary like what we think is good. So in the room, Steve Langlois is in the back here. Jelaine is on the camera, and David Myers is in the back over there also. And then myself, Dave Pecco, the president, and obviously Emily, vice president. So, but yeah, if you are interested, all right, you guys can sit. Sorry to be wet.
Hello. Okay, so a couple housekeeping things as we get into this. If you have questions in the room, please don't be shy. We want this to be as interactive as possible. However, we need you to wait for the mic. Okay, we do have a lot of virtual attendees and we want to make sure that they can hear you. Lastly, I'm going to take a moment, David, to give a round of applause to Dave. He works so hard and I'm just up there to support him when he needs it. That's it. And thank you to all of our other board members. They're amazing. I can't believe how much you guys do, but thank you. Okay. I love this. I think I can see who our technologist is, Josh. So everybody, thanks again so much for coming today. This is our second part of the Hot AI Summer series, and we got some rain today. So hopefully we'll get the Hot AI Summer through September in our last one. Please make sure to grab a fan to keep you cool in the summer and a keychain to help you open your beverage of choice, okay? Some more. It's a professional organization discussion in technology, cybersecurity, or honestly, it's moving at a pace that we've never seen before. Shaping industries, you know, we have panelists from healthcare, security, but it's changing the way the world. It's also increasing these sophisticated threats. Individual to execute cyber attacks, whether it's ransomware and so forth, using generative AI. So there's so much promise with artificial intelligence, and I think if you work at an enterprise, I'm so excited every day, but there's also a lot of risk that's associated with that, right? Uncertainty, intellectual property concerns, and like we already talked about. So that the conversation of governance comes in. Hopefully a lot of you are having fun and playing around with AI. If you are, raise your hand. Great. And if you're doing really innovative, amazing things and you want to be successful, so that's what we're talking about today. It's much more than just a compliance checklist. Compliance PCI requirement. It's a lot more than that. It's about enabling innovation while consequences. So while keeping the pace of change. So we have an esteemed panel here today from a technologist, founder, and innovator that's shaping AI security, who runs his company's center. So before we get into the question, what every detail now, why your organization?
Excellent, thank you.
Yeah.
I spend most of my day talking with fellow and help them think through kind of target operating models for their security program. How they're starting to bring AI into security operations, when, where, why, and how it's being used, things of that nature. And I kind of play devil's advocate. I'm there to effectively be the one really paranoid about all these discussions and think about where things could potentially go astray. So that's kind of what I do.
Okay, so my day-to-day is very much part of this conversation. So recently founded a company around AI security and AI consulting back in April at Claremont Labs. My day-to-day is really going through some of the practices that we're going to talk to today. So really helping organizations understand how to set up policies, how to set up an AI council, who does the ownership for AI, how do you identify AI advocates, how do you handle AI use cases and projects that you want to bring into the organization, and how you balance kind of innovation and making sure that you're staying ahead of the curve using and utilizing AI, but also thinking about security and governance.
Dave Snyder. I'm an attorney. So the joke was one of us is not like the other, and that's me. Ask me a technical question, and I will probably flow myself. My role at Encore MCM as the chairman for our artificial Center of Excellence for Artificial Intelligence kind of came to me on a little bit of a fluke, but also a little bit of a history of being kind of on special projects for the company. Also a big passion of mine around tech and around innovation. In fact, I was sharing, looking at my notes from 5 years ago, and I had my note in there, how is AI going to change our world, which is financial services, debt purchasing, debt collection. So looking forward to sharing with you how we built our COE, the day-to-day work, et cetera. I will say, I need to say two things as a lawyer. One, my views are not my company views, and number two, this is not legal advice. So.
Lisel, I'm going to echo that my views are also not my company views. I work internal to a small biotech company, oversees cybersecurity, risk, and compliance. And that, as it relates to AI, looks like in biotech, it's a lot of innovation and kind of trying to forward move. And of course, everyone's very excited about AI. And in IT, we don't want to stop forward progress, right? We want to support innovation, but doing so with governance, with regulation, and
Thank you. I have the second mic, so if you have questions, keeping an eye out. All right, well, let's dive into it. Josh, for you as our AI technologist in the room. You're a founder, you're an innovator. Where do you see the greatest gaps today between AI innovation and AI oversight? And how should companies balance innovation with the need for guardrails around safety, bias, and accountability?
Yeah, great question. And I think everybody kind of sees this in the news. Some CEOs are, let's go, let's figure out regulation and compliance later. That's a mistake. There's also some that are just sitting on the sidelines saying that there's way too much risk. We can't go down this path. We're seeing no IRI from our, maybe AI is going to change in a year, maybe 2 years. We'll just wait for that to happen. Both of those are the wrong approaches. So I think the balance is you really want to have a strategic view of this. So how are you going to bring this into your organization? So setting up things like an AI council. We've seen this be really effective, where somebody that may not even be a senior leader is kind of an AI advocate. They're the ones that actually know something about AI. They want to bring it into the organization. They understand, some of the use cases, maybe not all of them. And so they help establish kind of that first AI use policy, which is the first thing we recommend. So how is your set up the CIO, CISO office, really understand, innovate, and go as fast as you can. These are so. Waiting for compliance to catch up.
Okay, pretty sure that's 100%. Great. So whether you're using it to craft your emails to sound more professional, or you're building models in your garage or at your workplace, we're probably all using it in some way or another. Now, how many of you bring what you've done at home with AI into the workplace in some form or fashion? How many of you have had AI write something for you at home and then brought that into the workplace? Probably more, right? Yeah. So great point to bring up, Josh. Anyone else want to touch on that topic?
Yeah, I was thinking about one of the gaps that I see just heard and the execs are hearing about AI and they come to management and say, what are we doing? And it's like, well, what should we be doing, right? It's kind of the knowing the what and the why and what the business use cases are, rather than scrambling to implement a tool. And I think we'll talk about this in a bit too, but not just the how are we using AI, let's use AI immediately, but really, like Josh was saying, developing the use cases and policies is kind of that baseline.
The one thing I'd like to throw in there is understanding your company is how do your executive leaderships want to leverage the technology? What is risk plus return on investment? How are they going to balance those two? And then also your teams, the individual employees out there, how do they look at AI and how are they viewing its integration with their daily life? It's a big fear you need to deal with, and it's an interesting gap that has to be addressed.
It's probably one of the older folks on the panel, if not the room. A lot of what's in AI isn't necessarily that new, and I think it's good to have a little bit of a historical perspective. So like an AI committee, a risk committee, or a cybersecurity committee. Committees do a lot of heavy lifting when it comes to governance. If you think about SBOMs and AI SBOM, if you think about the technology stack, literally from the interface where you're doing your prompts all the way down into the code and the chips from NVIDIA et al. All of these things have historical precedents. If you look at agentic AI, it's not that really dissimilar, if you will, to what the promise was, SOAR and automation and things of that nature. So I think it's always good, directly to your point about kind of the FOMO, pivot and try to contextualize. Have a little bit of an opportunity to look at things from a variety of different elevations. At the third, to me, down things to that nature there as well.
Great. Some excellent points. I think thinking about the ROI for your organization, if you feel like it's important, what's in it for them, right? You got to think about that. I also love the point that you brought up, Dave, about and what if you are behind? Do you like how will that make your employee base? You know, also do they have that FOMO that we talked about? So hopefully you're understanding why it's important. Do certain things, put controls in place and guardrails around our AI usage and development at our organizations. So I'm going to hand this one over to the lawyer. A quick quote. So last September 2024, the US, Britain, and the EU signed the first international AI treaty. And, excuse me, his name is, it might be, I'm not sure, Shabana Mahmood, stated that this convention is a major step to ensuring that these new technologies can be harnessed without eroding the oldest values like human rights and the rule of the law. So this AI convention that wrote this treaty mainly focused on protection of human rights of the people that are affected by AI systems. There's a separate EU AI Act, which was entered into force in August of 2024. So similar to the privacy laws, Europeans always a little bit ahead of us. So David, how do you see the US catching up and a similar governance, AI governance compared to what Europe has put in place with the EU AI Act?
Well, I don't know if catching up. I don't know if catching up would be the right way to. We have, over the past maybe 2-3 years, a flurry of bills being proposed for artificial intelligence. Allison came and went. Only very few passed. Those that passed, Colorado passed, which was the bill passed. Then you have bills passing around deep fakes, kind of abuse of artificial intelligence to commit coming in where they're talking about using AI to generate an artificial voice. Those are the regulations that kind of changed the bar and made it through. But even Colorado hasn't made a move yet. In fact, there was a hearing, I think it was today in Colorado. Or reading in the year. My key takeaways on that is it's really popular to put out AI legislation. It's really tough to put out AI legislation that doesn't constrain business. And so, we look at, and we're in financial services, I look at financial services and I look at these bills that talk about consequential decision. And okay, well, what is a consequential decision? And then you start thinking about, well, maybe the consumer is fine with the AI. They may not even know. Like we talk about like the Privacy Act, and I think a lot of you are connected to privacy or privacy experts, and they talk about requests for information coming in, requests for deletions coming in, and you're not seeing them in the popularity that wants fear. So I think there's a lot of well-intentioned bills that are getting put up. They're not chinning far. They're not getting across that finish line. I think that with the EU AI Act, so you had a lot of resistance earlier this year. So you had the educational requirements go in around February. You had the general purpose AI requirements go in August 2nd of this year. You have the high risk systems, I think it's next year. So you have these kind of these provisions that are coming into effect. But even before this year, we had a lot of resistance in the EU, and a lot of companies, a lot of countries, I think Germany was one, came in and said, hey, we don't want this because it's going to chill innovation. And you probably seen the battle with Meta and the EU, and you've seen a lot of that going on. So and then you have the UK who doesn't even have an AI yet. So you've got you've got multiple views on how we're going to implement regulation. One big takeaway that kind of the lawyers, in the room we always talk about is the law is the law, right? So if you commit fraud, you commit fraud. If you put out a bad product, you may have product liability issues. And on that note, you see that OpenAI was sued today or the other day for where parents are blaming OpenAI and ChatGPT for the death of suicide of their son. And you read through, I don't know if you can look at it, you read through some of the prompts and like, wow, that's an interesting argument. So trying to land it all, the legal in the US is sporadic, it's tough, it's state by state. I don't see a federal legislation coming out anytime soon. They did try to do something in that recent bill. It didn't pass. It didn't, 10-year moratorium on state regulation. That didn't happen. But you will see states entering the game in some consumer protection fashion. And I think if I were the same thing, like I said, the law is the law. You need to approach it and understand how your AI interacts within your legal and regulatory framework.
Thank you so much.
Wait, still.
Yes. All right. We're going to talk a little bit about risks that organizations need to consider. And many of you as practitioners, as you're working within your organizations, working with AI models or, technology that uses AI, what you should be thinking about and asking questions around. And we're going to get to the latest hot buzzword in AI, agentic AI. Okay. So, there's been so much research and materials coming out. OWASP, which hopefully some of you are familiar with OWASP. They're the professional organization more focused on application security, but a lot on AI now too. And they've published multiple things, but one of the more recent ones was the top 10 risks for LLMs. And also on a separate paper on agentic AI. Additionally, if you have not yet seen it, this month, there's a group at MIT called NANDA, very catchy acronym. It stands for Networked Agents and Decentralized AI. There's a fascinating research paper that just got published out by this group NANDA from MIT. There's a wonderful Fortune article if you can get past the paywall to read it. You can also listen to it like I usually do. But some really interesting things that came out of it as you know, we're now well into our journey with generative AI. I remember being at an IT leadership offsite. It must have been in the winter, January or February of 2023, I believe. And ChatGPT, I want to say, does anyone know it came out November 22? Does that sound right? Yeah, so we're well into our journey, if those dates are right. Someone can fact check me because I'm not sure. I didn't write that part down. What we're seeing now, though, is as companies are, pursuing their AI journey and their AI strategy, the research that this NANDA group from MIT did shows that 95% of all AI pilots fail. And why is that? Why is that? right? Is it that they just throw something out there and maybe don't have the ongoing maintenance and governance to monitor, is it really working? Maybe they don't have a council or a center of excellence to follow up on how things are going. It can be so many things, right? Additionally, the research stated that businesses, when they try to get the AI models to do business the way they've always done it, it doesn't usually succeed. It usually fails. So you have to think in a new way as we start using these AI models in our business environment, right? You're training the models to become, part of your team, right? But they're going to operate in a different way. The last point I found really interesting from this research report that I read just today, actually, was that companies that bought into AI models and solutions, so to technology companies that use generative AI in some way or another, are more successful than when organizations try to build their own AI models. So especially for heavily regulated industries, some of which we have in the room today, they may say, well, we want to do it ourselves because we want to know exactly what's going into the model. But if you're not an NVIDIA, a Google, that's a very big undertaking. So that's a lot to unpack. But we're going to bring it back. And actually, I do have that fact that I just mentioned around the AI tools succeeding. 67% succeed when they're using, what we sometimes call off-the-shelf technology. Whereas when they're building it in-house themselves, these models, it pans out to only about a third as often. So as organizations or cybersecurity professionals, as they're pursuing their AI strategies and they're considering the use of generative and agentic AI, what kind of risks and controls are they going to face and should they consider?
I think about a lot is the excessive permissions, or what does agentic AI have access to? Both, used internally, but then also third-party vendors. If I have vendors who are using agentic AI or AI in general, and I'm not aware of that or don't necessarily agree with the decisions that agentic AI is making on my behalf. I had a conversation with my red team testers recently and was asking, I think they brought it up, that is AI going to replace me? And he said, no, it made my job super easy. It enumerated the entire environment for me once I had access to it. I found all the accounts in the environment, privileged access. It made it, extremely easy, especially if, the agents have the ability to modify policies, change permissions, elevate access. So that, for me, that's something I worry about is, are we aware of what each of those agents are doing, how they're provisioned, what permissions they have, and then I forget where I heard it, but someone had a great quote that IT becomes the new HR of AI, where that oversight, I love that. But are we giving it its job role and responsibilities, doing performance reviews, doing monitoring, right?
So a couple things. One on the failure cases, I think is really interesting is the education gap. So a lot of organizations, they're kind of, well, let's cowboy up some scattershot projects and see how it goes. So there's a huge education gap. There's not that many people that actually understand AI. There's people that are the weekend warriors that kind of get up to speed. But if you don't have kind of the background of understanding how it uses data sets, what's the difference between an LLM versus, from a cloud, provider versus trying to build your own from data sets versus using a RAG to bring data in kind of around an LLM, all of these different things. You need to kind of have these experts in your organization or hire them to help you do this. Because trying to do this on your own, you're going to, we're talking about risks, you're going to potentially leak data, you're going to have reputational risk. There's some interesting examples from last year, like Chevy. I don't know if anybody saw this, but one of the Chevy dealerships just said, okay, here's our chatbot. It basically was ChatGPT plugged right into their browser. And they were like, great, interact with this chatbot, find out more about the Chevys that are on our lot, all this kind of stuff. immediately people turned them into Toyota dealerships, Tesla dealerships. Somebody had them write up a legal contract that sold them a vehicle for $1. You know, these are the kind of nightmares that people want to avoid, obviously. So that's a big one. So that reputational risk aspect, data leakage from private data. If you're training your own models, now that data is potentially in the model itself versus being protected in a similar way. So that gap of education is a really important one.
I would say a couple of things as it relates to these programs and initiatives. We tend to be conflating deterministic expectations versus probabilistic expectations in the work environment. Deterministic is a perfect way to do automation. If I always do X followed by Y followed by Z, then I can automate that. If I need somebody to think about things or go out and do these things, then you're in more of that probabilistic issue. So I would suspect in the MIT analysis and study that a lot of those failures beyond the governance issues is that they've got a focus, if you will, to have a defined outcome every time. And they're using the wrong tool. It's effectively a square peg in a round hole is an issue. From a security perspective, and I spoke to some folks last week here about this, we're not doing anything with respect to threat modeling right now with these AI tools, agentic AI, the infrastructure that supports it. As a profession, all of us that are in the cybersecurity side of things, we got to up our game real damn fast. We need to start threat modeling these tools. We need to understand the components. We need to understand how Russians are poisoning a lot of these larger models, some of the components in OSS, Kubernetes, loaded images, these things. We're not even looking at it. And our counterparts on the business side are just adopting these programs absent any real understanding of the potential risk, let alone kind of the data governance and quality that comes out of it.
Yeah, I think that last point, Matt, is a great one. And I think we were talking earlier about how generative AI is just increasing the frequency and the speed of cyber attacks and making it easy for almost an everyday person to execute these attacks, right? And I was listening, it's not in our notes on this one, but I do a lot of listening when I drive, when I walk. There's a great video from Anthropic that talks just about that and how our teams, especially when you're looking more at threat intelligence, how we are going to need to keep up with these attacks. We need our teams to build automation to respond to these attacks through models and things like that. And that'll take time, but it's a good one to listen to. Here, hold on just a sec.
So Matt, I actually have a question regarding that. I worked for one of those companies and I know Cribble and a few others, we all have very active scientists and other things on our staff that are doing that threat hunting and threat modeling. And you can see it published on a daily basis coming out and just screaming at the top of their lungs about the dangers of AI. Here are examples. Here are how they're being used. Here's what other bad actors are doing. So I wasn't sure that what you meant is as individual companies or end users of it, we're not doing it, or if it's the companies providing the tools that aren't doing it.
It's actually all of the above. The level of threat modeling, different from threat hunting and red teaming exercises. Threat modeling is effectively looking at it from a security by design perspective. How do you spoof, tamper, kind of the traditional stride, repudiate information disclosure, deny services, elevate privileges. We screwed this up with security tools beforehand, and now it's just accentuated with AI models. The thing about it is that our AI tools, to her point earlier about entitlements and privileges and things of that nature, these tools tend to operate with extraordinarily high privilege within our operating environments. If we don't really understand what they're doing, that poses significant risk. So as a profession, our outcomes are piss poor. We have to raise the bar. That means that as a profession, as an industry, as a group of different organizations, we need to bring these issues front and center. And I think companies are trying to do the right thing, some, but I think others have just caught up and, oh yeah, we do AI too. And, we've got this and we've got that. The engineering may not be. I know you wanted to say something.
Yeah, so on that point right there, there's an interesting kind of conflation happening too in the vocabulary. So when we say AI security, there's kind of two sides of it. There's one where we're trying to secure AI systems. So that's kind of a lot of what we've been talking about so far. But there's also using AI for current cybersecurity practices. So it's kind of a Venn diagram. There's some interesting stuff in the middle where you're using you're using AI security work to actually secure AI systems. That gets kind of crazy, but it's important to kind of delineate those two. And another thing that comes up a lot is when people are going fast and trying to use AI for their cybersecurity practice, they're not thinking about securing the AI that's being used for their cybersecurity practice. Which is a very dangerous place to end up. And then earlier about the guardrails and the deterministic versus probabilistic is really interesting because that's why these guardrails are so difficult to build. And that's why you don't see any of these companies that are building these tools just completely win the market. It's hard. So when these chatbots, give you completely different results every time you interact with them, you're going to have a hard time kind of understanding how to filter them, how to make new, responses out of them and test, the usual TEVV is difficult to do, let alone security. So trying to understand, what models are actually giving me things that I can rely on. I'll use Grok as an example. If anybody plays with Grok, it will give you wildly inappropriate things that you would not put in front of a customer. So how are you going to put guardrails around something like that? So that's an important.
Thank you, Josh. I'm gonna move over to Lisel and David next. And I have a feeling we'll keep touching on these things. You both work in highly regulated industries, so biotech and financial services. So many regulatory requirements, FFIEC, FDA, HIPAA, you name it, plus an international organization. So how do you help ensure that your company's usage of AI and AI models are complying with these requirements without slowing down the innovation? And also, how do you avoid the risk of shadow AI? I almost said IT, shadow AI and AI sprawl.
Yeah, the big one, I think I touched on it before too, biotech innovation is the name of the game. So it really is making sure that the perception and the reality of IT is not hindering innovation. And as I was thinking about this, I was thinking, accountability versus control, and that there's a combination of the two, and then how you implement that. And another concept I had heard talked about is if you don't help expand the network, your users will expand your network for you in ways that you're not going to enjoy, right? So it's like Emily touched on before, that they're, emailing things that they generated from ChatGPT to themselves and, finding workarounds. Mm-hmm. So for me, it's really understanding the business use cases and how can I support that without hindering it. And, biotech's interesting in that kind of collaborative and innovative space where a lot of, I touched on permissions earlier, a lot of, whether it's SharePoint, Dash, or what have you, is open by design because they want to foster collaboration and innovation. Well, now you put, ChatGPT or Copilot on top of that, and someone in chemistry can read payroll HR data, right? So it's, a lot of the data governance piece is, it's concerning. And I think, Matt, that you both touched on earlier when we were chatting that, some of that DLP and data, kind of groundwork was done to begin with, that now we're slapping AI on top of it, and it gets a little messy. But I think, really the proactive security, and for me, a big thing that's helped is having tools that help me identify what AI is being used, so I can understand, what is the business actually doing, and whether that's audits and, kind of sitting in front of them and asking, but really using more of kind of that monitoring strategy of what actions are they taking, and then taking both the accountability approach as well as the control approach. So there are some tools that I'm blocking out, right? It's not relevant with the TikToks of the world of the deep sea, right? Like we're not using that period, no argument. And then for the others, having a little acceptable use policy pop up anytime they're accessing a category of Gen AI. So for me, it's, allowing usage while also having the bowling lane bumpers on the side that I'm helping that as well.
Great.
I think similar. So one in the company I work for, we call it cultural compliance. Our compliance is from the executives down. It's quarterly training, we understand it. When we're looking at our modeling, we understand all of our requirements and the various, alphabet soup of regulations, both internationally and domestically. I mean, we built our world around those regulations. So that's almost the baseline. That's the entry. Like whatever you're going to do has to meet that. And if you can't meet that, we can't even do business, or we can't use that. At the company, at Encore, when we started the Center of Excellence, so people think, oh, I'm going to do a Center of Excellence. I'm going to come up with all these great ideas and we're going to implement AI. And we seriously spent the first year on governance. We spent the first year educating ourselves. We spent the first year trying things out, talking to people. We built our first kind of an acceptable use policy. We did a very limited proof of concept on, okay, we're going to use at that point in time it was Bing Copilot. Now, Chat Copilot. Told Microsoft they got way too many Copilots. It's hard to convincing. But we started out there and we've moved our way through, and we've created a process where the AI that's coming into the company is vetted before we use it. And it's vetted by InfoSec, and it's vetted by our IT team and legal and risk and compliance teams. And it's vetted by the business for its return on investment. And then as we exit, right? So let's say a use case comes in, we've gone through it, we've done the evaluations, we've approved it. As it exits, then we follow up. Is it meeting what you said it would do? Is it achieving its goals? Is it achieving another goal? It's acceptable. That's also a possibility. Have you built the controls so that you can monitor it, so that you understand it? I think that was how we formed the foundation for our Center of Excellence. It's been a really great journey. Really educational, and you can start to see, well, the confidence now is with our executives. Okay, well, if that AI has come in, I know that these folks have gone ahead and vetted it, and they've looked at it. And we still get challenges, right? They still challenge. So that's their job. But they're also more informed, and they know how to challenge it. And when the questions they ask are very specific to those use cases. So. Yeah, I think that's how we deal in that regulated entity through care.
Yeah, no, that's great, Dave. Thank you for explaining that. And it's, I think all of us have dealt with spreading cybersecurity awareness at our organizations, and how do you create this cyber aware, cyber conscious culture. And what Dave explained that his organization is doing the same thing, but for AI, which I think is really amazing. When we were prepping for this as well, one thing that I hadn't heard before is their Center of Excellence also, whatever, let's say marketing comes to them with a new AI tool they want to use and it gets approved by the COE. They have like a 90-day or a 180-day circle back where they come back, that the owner of the tool comes back and they say, did the AI tool do what you expected it to do? Where were its shortcomings? What additional controls need to be put in place? Or, those kinds of questions, which I think is really amazing. So I love the awareness and it spreads governance. I'm going to have you close out this one, Matt. If you could talk, about you're in an advisory role and you've been a CISO for many years. So we've been on this journey before. Right? We've been on this journey with cloud. We've been on this journey with cybersecurity. So with AI specifically, what have you seen best practices to adopt AI governance into the enterprise risk management program, spread awareness across the executive team, the board of directors? What are some effective strategies that you've seen?
I'm just going to log what David's team is doing, because literally metrics. Going back, is it fit for purpose? Is it doing what we anticipated it to do? Those things I think are foundational. Having a good governance model, roles, responsibilities. Think of it like just a basic RACI matrix. Who's responsible, accountable, who owns the outcome, who's consulted, and who's informed. Having good policy and procedure. These are foundational. When you were describing what you're doing there, that's just good management. That's a company that's executing and looking at what they should be doing. But one invocation, and again, going back to what Lisel said about this FOMO, that's real. We should not underestimate how acute that is. And the rapidity and the timescales that we're up against now, we're getting to the point where our ability to look at things and adjust to them correctly is really, really challenged. And so timescales, incident response at machine speed, these sorts of things are going to stretch our organizations, which is going to put huge strain, I think, on governance. What I think is always best, and it's one of the reasons why I advocated within a cybersecurity charter and a risk committee, is a disparate group of individuals, people with a legal kind of professional background, line of business executives, technologists, cybersecurity and privacy individuals. No one department, no one team actually has a monopoly on what works and what doesn't. It's good to have a rigorous debate internally in the organization. The companies that I see that do that very, very well, they have really brutal debates, heated debates, but then they ultimately agree on how differences are going to be adjudicated within the organization. And then you kind of fall into line based on that approach. But I think metrics, kind of getting the basic governance foundation stuff has been there front and center.
Fully agree, and I applaud David's approach for sure. I think a lot of times, like, it really is culture. So if the culture is compliance first, like you're talking about, that's great. That's a really powerful way to start. Also, if you are a heavily regulated industry, then you kind of have some of these things forced upon you. However, if your culture is not there, or you're just not a large enough organization, like, where do you get started? So I think a lot of what we were talking about are some of those best practices of really what you should be doing. But how do you measure success? So ROI, obviously, you want to be doing that. Like, are we actually getting value out of the things that we're trying to build? Are we compliant with something? Let's pick something. That's why it's important to have an AI council or a center of excellence to figure out, like, what are we actually going to try to adhere to? Because it can't be nothing. So you need some kind of basic, hygiene about how you're doing your data handling, security, all the way to how you're doing your model security, all the way to the system itself. Are you leaking data? What are the concerns that you actually have before you connect that to a sensitive data set and put that out onto the world? But yeah, exactly. I think these are the kinds of conversations and educating the workforce. So don't leave people kind of on their own weekend hunting to figure out what AI is. Try to educate your workforce as soon as possible.
Good timing. So the more detailed questions we've wrapped up, and we're doing great on time. Good job, panelists. We have a couple rapid fire questions, but I think we have a couple questions in the audience first.
Maybe this question is for you, Emily and Matt. So I don't know if you have ever attended a board of director meetings.
Yes.
Maybe 2 or 3 years ago, they start talking about cybersecurity.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know, or you notice that they already engage in the AI? Maybe they already have a chief artificial intelligence officer or something. Because maybe the lower levels, as you mentioned here, a lot of training or something, but the culture is what don't start.
Yeah.
So I don't know what you can share.
As far as cybersecurity goes, I would say, I know for a fact because it's the time Callaway hired me, around like when all the major breaches were hitting the news, Sony, Target, Home Depot, like 2014-ish was when the boards really started asking. However, at Callaway, we didn't have a designated board member responsible for cybersecurity until maybe 4 or 5 years ago, I want to say, around then. So it's still relatively new. What I've seen, there's not a designated, AI board member, or there's not, I don't believe, but I'll ask the panel, is there a requirement similar to, I cannot recall what it was, but when for public companies, they required someone with cybersecurity expertise on board.
Yeah. Oh, no, they didn't actually pass that. So that was actually removed from board. But what I will say is that it's absolutely a board issue. Boards are the worst when it comes to FOMO. They always do juxtaposition, comparing and benchmarking against other firms in the industry. So one company did X, how are we doing it? Those sorts of things. What I will say is I advise a company that's on the New York Stock Exchange, very large organization, not in this region. Their CIO was promoted to the CTO and given more visibility across the executive leadership team. And he's kind of like you are, David, championing their AI initiative. So I think what you'll end up seeing, very similar to what we have with the SEC's guidance on cyber risk, is an expectation that boards of directors are at least versed in AI, that they want to see the company's strategy. And it's part, frankly, if you think about management disclosures and analysis and risk factors within a company's 10K or 20F if they're foreign, these are things that need to be brought front and center. So.
Anyone else?
Echoing that, agreed. Is there absolutely questions we're getting from the board and the audit committee? And it's, the members who sit on these boards and audit committees are also on different boards, right? So they're seeing what happens across a lot of the organizations, which to Matt's point is exactly where the FOMO is coming.
Yes.
So-and-so is doing this, what are we doing? And it's, I liked Emily's the quote earlier where 95% of the pilots fail. I think a lot of that is because it's the, hey, Susie's doing this, you better get on it right now. Well, there's not the key success criteria and all of these metrics and that COE that David's put in place to really guide, are we doing the right things? What are we doing? But to your point, there absolutely is interest, not only in cybersecurity, but certainly in AI from, of course, the strategic and, competitive advantage perspective, but also just, curiosity and kind of what they're hearing out there.
Great.
All right, you guys ready?
Yes.
Rapid fire. Okay. So we saw in the room earlier, 100% of us are using AI in some form or fashion in our personal lives or our work lives or our work lives. How many in the room have an AI policy that's documented and approved and distributed at their organization? Okay, that's honestly not too bad. So for the panelists, it's not great, but for the panelists, if you were to leave the group with your top control or controls that you recommend every company implement as part of their AI governance program, bake that into their policy, what have you, what would those controls be?
For me, from a cybersecurity and AI perspective, it's that monitoring. I touched on it earlier, but just, really having the awareness of what are my users doing and then blocking what needs to be blocked. So, having a general monitor and control over anything that hits the Gen AI category, and then things that I would not like to have in the environment, taking that proactive block action.
About controls or where my mind goes, what I would go with is I would start with risk identification and risk classification and kind of ranking, and then build your controls around that for AI based upon your business case.
So the number one control for me is that AI use case policy. So build one, pick one. We're kind of building out templates for different organizations to help them kind of along this path. But if you don't have one, then it's the Wild West. So if you're a Microsoft shop, think about turning on Copilot, but what are the controls that you're going to put in place when you configure it for your organization? Work with your security professionals on that, with your data science teams. If you're a Google shop, very much consider turning on Gemini. If you're none of those shops, maybe pick something, Claude, whatever it might be. Just have an AI use policy to encourage people to have some innovative tools that are kind of at their fingertips, and not kind of doing shadow AI at home or out there working like that.
I would say respectfully, get the committee in place first. And really focus in on what are the voices that you need on the committee, what are the skills, perspectives. Equally important, the authorizations within the committee. Are they actually authorized to recommend policy, procedures, telemetry, monitoring, and the like? And then I would say at a technical level is be uber focused on threat modeling. Be paranoid. As a CISO, if you slice me open, I bleed paranoia. That's what we're supposed to be. We're not supposed to say no to things, but we're actually supposed to wonder how things work, how could they be compromised, et cetera. So I would really emphasize developing good threat modeling, and you don't have to do it in a really formal way, just ask the questions. And if you're not getting the right answer, start delving in more.
Great. Okay, last question. And Matt, keep that mic. You're our Jurassic Park fan, right? Am I right?
General pattern.
In our planning, you were our Jurassic Park fan? Oh, Lisel, pass that mic down to Lisel. Okay. Question for the panelists. Which is more dangerous to a company right now? Moving too slowly on AI adoption or too quickly without governance? And are we sacrificing quality by moving too quickly?
That day that we were having the planning session, someone had talked to me about AI. It was like, it was the Jurassic Park. Yeah, we can, but should we? So that's really with AI. It's, yes, there are a lot of capabilities. It's very, very powerful, but really thinking through the practicality of, are we moving too quickly? Is there, what risks are we talked a ton about risk and governance, what are we opening up to the business? And I love David's point on, what's the company's risk appetite in the culture, and really having the awareness of that, such that, let's slow, like, of course, we want forward progress and innovation, but not at the expense of, a huge cybersecurity breach and, an access breach and extensive data loss or IP loss risk. So I think balancing that risk mindset is great. Not letting the raptors loose.
There we go.
It shouldn't shock you that the risk professionals agree. I think it's what you deem your goals, what risk you're willing to tolerate, and how you want to approach that. I mean, I know I sound like a broken record, but I really think that's kind of like the foundation of it. And to your question, I think I worry more about moving too fast without proper governance, and not just from a lawyer view, but from a business view, because then you really just get some bad ideas that cost you spend a lot of money on, that you're doing rework on, or that are costing revenue and risking the company.
So as an AI innovator, I obviously want everything to go fast, and everyone to adopt AI as soon as possible. However, I actually totally agree with that. I think, how you define danger is obviously part of this too. But the danger definitely comes from moving too fast without governance, without thinking about security, these other things. However, if danger is, are you going to be around in 2 years? Then you do need to start thinking about how you're going to adopt AI. So having these pilots starting to take place, do your research, what's working out there for other people that you can try to copy and bring into your own workplace. But definitely always thinking about governance, compliance, and the risks to your organization.
I'm kind of mixed on it. There's elements of this that you do need to move quick and be innovative in these things. We should also kind of take pause and think about the societal impacts of what we're doing. Water usage, energy consumption, the grid, our ability to do these things at the scale, the geopolitical concerns around this. There's a lot here that I think as a society, we didn't really think about. Two dumb guys back in Harvard came up with a platform that was judging women. And now later, you've got a guy digging bunkers in different parts throughout Hawaii and the Bay Area, and you've got young women killing themselves over body image. There's societal things that we cannot overlook, and I think it's important for us to kind of put that on the table as well.
Yes, good wrap up for sure. So you could hear it in this panel today. AI governance, it's not just a single disciplinary or discipline problem. It's security, it's compliance, it's legal, it's innovation, and it's the intersection of all of them. We're going to open it up for questions. I know we have two questions already. So thank you so much for bringing those questions to the table. But before we do that, I want to make sure, like, this panel, such an engaging discussion. I think I'm really glad that we were able to bring this diverse group together. And we're going to tap that September panel because the focus in September, we touched on it today, but it's around security operations and threat intelligence, but we're going to have them touch on threat modeling as well. So we have a couple questions.
Yeah, hi, this is more of a comment, but also interested to hear your feedback on that. But really two things. One, with AI, human in the loop. Human in the loop is still, and will be, I think, for a period of time here important to validate the work. You know, in CISO's case, you talked about your people that just asked it what to do and it provisioned the lab and did all this other fun stuff, versus, you know, having an impact on the world. That, right, two completely different use cases. So that brings me up to my next point, it's just context. So whether you go fast or whether you go slow with adopting AI, I think the context is the perfect point. Perfect. If you're, let's take my company, Cribble, where I'm at, for example. We are in the business of helping customers convert data that looks like this into data that looks like this. The impact of that is using AI for that is very low, right? Versus using AI to, you know, run the next biotech company, right? So just context and human in the loop. That's kind of two things of consideration.
I would comment there because I think the human in the loop thing is really interesting. And from the defense world, if anybody comes from that background, there's another term called human on the loop. But I think you'll see kind of take off, especially with these agentic systems. So it's not necessarily a human being part of every single decision making that's going on, but it's who's monitoring you know, these systems, who's monitoring the agents, who's actually spawning them and looking at the results. So the human on the loop, I think you're going to see a lot more.
So you in your comment, you said, for the time being, I think it was the phrase that you used, right? And that brings up probably a risk that I think about as we look out maybe 2 or 3 years from now, which is over reliance. So you get very used to that AI doing it, and you get used these semi-autonomous agents moving into autonomous agents, and then you all of a sudden start backing off because you're just relying on it and no one's looking anymore. I you know, hate to sound like, you know, T-800 coming at you, but
Hi. So you guys were mentioning that established AI agentic systems are more likely to succeed over trying to like create your own, like within companies. So I was just kind of wondering if you guys, like for what you do, if you have found more success with like using your own like open AI agent APIs and getting results out of that, or using something like OpenAI agents, like something that's already established, and which one of those two you see more success with, and like what's overall like net positive that you've seen from that?
So I think, if I remember correctly, I think we were talking about just AI systems in general, not specifically agentic. So I think the comment was more about kind of going on your own, building your own models with your own data sets versus trying to use, you know, tools that are kind of available, that a lot of people are using and kind of adopting. So I think the success case there with that MIT study is very much on the side of if you use these tools that people are widely adopting and using and have a little bit more tried and true kind of practice and workflows, you're going to have more success than if you try to build these things on your own. So I think that's the kind of general comment.
From an internal company perspective too, that, you know, really security and data loss is important. So in general, I'm not using open source systems. It's going to be, you know, if it's ChatGPT, it's going to be our own instance of ChatGPT. So you're not, you know, feeding the global, you know, LLM with all of our company information. So, you know, encouraging use of ChatGPT for, you know, scrubbed, you know, if you're going to ask me a question, you better not be able to attribute that to that I said this, you know, at any point, but I don't know if that helps. But it's very close to awareness.
Thank you guys. And I hear a lot from you that you need to think about AI security as soon as possible. But I agree with you for 100, 200%. But it's still kind of philosophical. It's from the practical point of view. Let's imagine that you're a fresh kid from MIT. You just raised your first 100K seed round. You started to do your AI and biomedical stuff. So do you mean that I need to spend this 100 immediately on cybersecurity without even having any minimal value product without customers? What's a kind of right, I don't know, models for where the thinking? What's the moment you need to really start to think about cybersecurity?
For Josh, probably.
Just bluntly, our computer science programs damn well better be teaching cybersecurity and security by design principles as part of this. Dr. Ed Amoroso, when he was the CISO at AT&T years ago, when I was part of AT&T Labs, goes, if a computer scientist built an engine, or if a programmer built a bridge, would you drive across it? If they built a plane, would you fly in it? If it was an elevator, would you ride in it? And if you valued your life, the answer would be no.
Yeah.
You know, the error rates, I think, from an engineering perspective, are really, really challenging. And so, you know, clearly you have to build the company, but this notion that security and innovation, security and development, et cetera, are mutually exclusive, I think is a false dichotomy that we need to call to task every time we hear it.
Thank you. Yes. Completely agree. Secure by design, obviously, from organizations like CISA. You need to be thinking about this as you develop. And I think, to your point, I think that is part of these, you know, obviously if somebody drops out of school and doesn't get these courses, they don't know that. But if you go through a rigorous engineering program and you're going to build an AI company, you pass those courses. So you know how to build secure code. You know how to do this from left to right. There's lots of frameworks out there. You don't need to spend your 100K on a tool that does AI security. I would argue those don't even exist right now. So it's really about practices, not necessarily buying tools.
I had a vendor tell me once, we're a security company, not a compliance company. And I'm like, oh, the red flags. Oh, that's, we can't give you a software for it. We focus on security. I'm like, okay, bye. So it has to be.
Great question and great responses. Thank you. I think we'll take one more. Is that good, David? Okay, one more question, and then we'll stick around afterwards if you guys want to chat some more. Lisel, you had mentioned that you use certain tools to kind of sort out where, I can't recall exactly how you phrased it, but either the company's using AI or where not to use AI. I'm just super curious to know what tools you're using.
Yeah, like gonna genericize it just so I'm not giving away one-on-one on how, what tools our company is using. CASB tools, so the Cloud App Security Broker tools, whether it's Cloud App Discovery or web proxy tools, you can build controls in each of those that show, you know, kind of web traffic monitoring. And those, you know, some of the web proxy tools have categorization. So I'll put a, you know, a high level control about any Gen AI usage is going to have a pop-up before the user can get to that website that says, you know, I agree to use this and here it's with acceptable use, you know, I will not upload company data, blah, blah, blah. So it's through both the identity provider and web proxy tools, it's Cloud App Security Broker. All of those, if you're using some of the kind of the big players, they do have built-in controls where you can, you know, kind of customize alerting or customize pop-ups and use those to monitor. I know that's a little vague. I'm just trying not to use tool names.
I want to take one real quick. We do that.
So I watched their demo and yes, it looks like a fantastic. They can tell you more specifics. I'm really careful about not naming my security.
Anyone else?
I don't know if you guys want to talk to that too.
Yeah, it's interesting. So I think once you set an AI use policy, before you do that, and this is my own experience, I was using lots of different tools and not thinking too much about it. You know, obviously not putting sensitive data in. And then when we thought about it, we did the good practice of we like to say drinking our own champagne versus eating our own dog food. But once we did that, it really kind of changed our mindset. You know, okay, now we're in this ecosystem. We're going to use the tools that are really, you know, designed for working with our data inside of this system. We get more benefit out of that actually versus like trying to scrub data and put it on tools that maybe we don't really want to put any of our sensitive data on. So that first step was really important kind of internally for us.
Can I add something to our that Lisel just said, that it's best practice that regardless of this, if you are a company that's going to enable your employees to use AI, pick something, make it an offer, have them do it via your Active Directory entries. That way you have them using that and it is sanctioned by the company. So if you're not going to do it, they're going to go put your credit card down, find a way to access it. Without that, and that's where you get problems with your information, with private company assets and things, getting in places they shouldn't be. So embrace, give your people access to it, but use the control that Lisel just mentioned, to making sure that the employees are using their work accounts to access it. So you can put the pop-up reminders and all the other things that you go through in training on a regular basis twice a year and say, I won't do stupid things like look up good things in emails and people like, oh, no. It's kind of a very similar thing to that. And it's a great tool. That most companies that are embracing that are those that are starting to lead the industry and going out and being innovative in all settings. So I commend you and the panelists there for recommending it.
I totally agree. Exactly. You want to encourage the tool usage through the corporate networks for exactly that point, that if it's outside of your network, you can't see it. So I can't alert or monitor something that I don't have visibility into. So you do want it to be through appropriate authorized company sponsored channels, so then I can put controls and boundaries around it. Because it does get, you mentioned shadow IT, it does get squirrely where, all of a sudden all these different departments go, they hear about something bright, shiny and new, and all of a sudden you've got 20 AI tools doing the same darn thing, which.
That's why you have a COE that covers it all.
Great way to wrap it up. Thank you all for being here with us tonight. I hope you found this conversation as engaging as I did. Thank you to ISSA for having us, KPMG for the location, to our sponsors, Cribble, thank you so much, and to my firm, GuidePoint Security. Please make sure to grab your flag. And lastly, to our panelists, thank you for the real life, practical, and innovative strategies that we can use to implement governance around our AI models and strategy at our organization. So you guys have a great night. We'll stick around for a bit if you want to chat more. Thank you. And Dave.
All right, so something I forgot for crucial listeners and people out of school, I just wanted to give a quick shout out. Two of our volunteers actually just locked in an internship opportunity. Sophia and Darius, check in. Through coming to these events, they found some programs and things and are starting with Fiori soon. Very cool opportunity. And then coming around the end of the slideshow, just with all the stuff that's going on. Coach Dave, on that same note, offered to give the members complimentary resume review services. So advice on getting past ATS systems and just looking at how to translate technical things that you guys are doing into business impacts so that the hiring managers will, perk up. So I don't know if you want to say anything else on that line, but
Yeah, let's take a minute. So first of all, absolutely love the panel, super fascinating. So let's do another round of applause. So as Dave said, I'm an IT career and life coach. I've been in IT, as the gray hair shows, almost 30 years. And so I've transitioned into helping IT professionals land new roles, get promoted, and deal with the whole work-life balance thing that we're all about. So, and one of the things that I deal with a lot with clients is the usual, I've submitted 200 resumes and I'm getting no response. Just like the world of AI keeps changing, the world of job search keeps changing. So I focus with clients on how to do things a little differently to get different results. So happy to give back to the community. Come see me. I'll send you a resume, give you some feedback, and we'll talk about how to do things a little bit different. Thank you.
yeah, so obviously we're going to be doing networking now. So feel free to talk to them right now. And then for the people online, reach out to us and we'll get you in contact if that's of interest, or feel free to find them on LinkedIn. Is it under Coach Dave or Dave Mallon?
Coach.
Okay, Coach Dave on LinkedIn. Perfect. And we can close off the virtual. So thank you guys for joining virtually and kick off networking.